I want to do is to thank Amanita, Laura, Kate and Freya for that wonderful performance, and what a wonderful way to spend a Friday afternoon. So the first thing I want to do is thank you, all of you, and I think I just want to ask any of you a question about anything you found striking about that. What was most striking to any of you about what you've just seen? If anyone would like to say anything, just actually, if you want to say something, if you just say your name, or just put your hand up and I'll say your name.
Morgan.
Yeah.
What they did in 4 days. I don't know if that's just me, but composing brand new music in 4 days when I'm assuming you hadn't known each other before that, and yeah.
Maybe you'd say something, Freya, just about the process. So 4 days, how much time have you had together?
So yes, we auditioned because I was really keen to meet new people and to make some new interesting contacts, and again to find people from different disciplines from the one that I was existing in as a singer as well. So we did some auditions which were absolutely amazing, and the thing I would say is it became very clear there was a thirst for this kind of cross-discipline, cross-arts work, which was really exciting. We only had a finite budget, so there's 4 of us this time, which has been amazing and wonderful. And then we came together for 4 days 2.5 weeks ago. And we did a 4-day practice, together, where I had already started to think about the text a little bit, so the questionnaires had come in before Christmas. So I was aware of the themes that were interesting, but I was also really aware that I wanted the artists to feed in their perspective on the themes as well. And then today we have reminded ourselves of how it all goes and stitch it together.
Have any of you got specific questions about that process, or about any of the different elements that are in the things that you see? Yeah.
Samir, I was very impressed by your improvisation, because rehearsal is one thing, but to actually 4-part harmony improvisation, not really knowing where you're going, but actually doing something very creative with a word and using your bodies at the same time to echo the sounds we were hearing. And I'd be fascinated to know how you prepared really for that. How do you prepare to improvise?
As part of our, I'd say everybody here has experience of doing that in their own ways, from their own disciplines, which is really exciting. We did a lot of, so for me, I am ensemble director is what I want to do. So lots of exercises that I do are about reading the room, reading each other, and then starting to add voice really early on. So we would maybe do a warm-up. We were going to hopefully show you one, but we didn't have time, but a warm-up where we might just start on our own and then finding places where we can converge and part. And I think through doing that, just a sense of reading each other and trying to put some rules in place to help us then know how to find each other in those moments. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, and that's kind of the joy of improvising. So.
Any other question before I... Yes?
I was interested in what was being said about how you can bring opera to new audiences. And is this technique something you think is a way of bridging that gap between current audiences and new community?
I'm really interested in... I was really trying to think about this great thing where I will go and work with young people and say, this is opera and this is something for you, and then they go and see something new, and for whatever reason it stops there, and I was trying to think why, and I think, I'm kind of calling it folk opera at the moment, but this idea that we hear our own stories and we recognise ourselves in work being made is maybe a way to begin that conversation, so that we realise that we can all exist in this world of storytelling and using the voice and the body to make stories. The theme and the topic was, again, hopefully to try and encourage people to see themselves in the work, because I think, we've got so many differences. Just on the topic of mother, there are so many different viewpoints. How do we capture those all in a way that can mean something to as many people as possible?
Can I ask any others of you for any impressions? Any impressions you had listening to that, experiencing it? Yes.
I'm Amma. Thank you so much for that. I was really amazed at the amount of community that seemed to have formed between the 4 of you in such a short space of time, and how generous you were with extending that. I felt we were all kind of initiated into it, and that I was surprised how I could resonate with almost every single thing that somebody said about their mother. With my mum and her mother, they're both very different, and I thought that was really really powerful and really beautiful.
Great.
Thank you, and I think that's a really key point and a really important one. We talk a lot, as Spitalfields Music and elsewhere, I'm sure, and think a lot about community cohesion. That's become a kind of thing we talk about, and it seems to me that what you're doing here, actually it's a question, it's a balance. Freya, you sort of, in terms of leading this process, there are diverse voices here, 4 of you, which seems that very effectively contributing to creating something which is coherent, and also a diversity of expression. You're using music, you're using text, you're using movement, theatre. Do you say something about that that balance of the diversity of voices and making something coherent, and how, you know, what was your role in that, Freya? How did you make that work? And then maybe just ask the audience about their impression of that coherence.
I think I'm aware that I'm not a composer, so when I came to this process, a lot of my friends that were composers talked to me about how difficult it can be for voices to blend when they're from different musical disciplines. And I thought, well, great, I don't know that, so let's try it. I feel like that has not, from my ears, that hasn't been the case. And I think that's, in part, that's just about, I think we're pushing each other to try using our voices in different ways, but also trying to highlight the skills of the different voice types in the room. So there have definitely been moments where we've said, we need a rhythm, okay, a flamenco rhythm, or a spoken word piece has come in, or the idea of, let's write a folk song, okay, let's use this kind of. So it has been very, I think everyone's been very generous in lending their ideas into the process, which is exactly what we wanted, a melting pot. So that people can engage in different ways. With the idea you could perform this in a middle of a library or a market or anywhere, a seaside, and people might be drawn in with so many different hooks, I hope. And I think the same with the theatre and the movement. That opera is a fantastic forum because it's got so many disciplines and it is a cross-arts forum. But just saying, let's go further with that.
It's quite an art to take the diversity of input and make something coherent out of it. It strikes me, at least, that this is a very coherent thing that you're making. I wonder if there's any particular questions that you, Freya, or any of you are interested in hearing from us here. You know, in having presented that, any questions in your mind about how this piece works in performance?
Yeah, I've got 2 things. I would be really interested to just know how it feels. Obviously at the moment we've stitched together a load of different things. I feel like it's more like a concept album at the moment of just the different things that we've come up. How much does that affect people in terms of what they want and expect when they see a piece of performance that's theatre? Is that an okay vehicle, I suppose, is one of my questions. Maybe I'll ask that one.
Would anyone like to answer?
Hi, I'm Bronwyn. I was actually going to say, before you asked that question, I thought it was a really nice journey, actually, between different styles, and as an audience, that kept me very engaged, and there were different things I could relate to with each part, you know, so the beautiful start of the harmony was very impressive. I happen to be a singer, so I appreciate that. I'm sure other people who aren't would appreciate that. But I liked how it then moved on to different forms so that people won't get intimidated. Oh, this is a singing role that I can't be part of. So I thought the voices blended incredibly well, so that wasn't an issue about having different styles and genres. And that actually you made it look so fun and easy at the same time as being skilled. I think it is a community thing that would draw people in.
Thank you. Tom, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say it didn't really feel like that. I think there's a degree to which I'm sure there was a sense of collage, but I'm also sure if you did those 3-4 sections in a different order, they would have turned out slightly different. I definitely felt like you had a beginning and you had an ending, and you led us through somewhere. And also there is a degree to which we bring that to it because you began somewhere and I took that as a beginning. I think that works because I think you play it down a bit when you say, oh, we put this together. It's like, no, I definitely felt it started and finished and you took it on a journey. So I actually think, and that can be a strength because it feels like, given the way you've been playing with improvisation, the idea you could have a selection of fragments to choose from, almost, and take it in the direction you want. It's that faint hint of structure, but space to explore. So I think that could be a strength for you too. It did not feel just like a scrapbook.
And I wonder, yes?
Can I just add, I also thought that it could definitely go further though.
Yeah.
I definitely felt like it was building somewhere, and that I could have kept going with you, and that I maybe wanted to feel more implicated and to be asked to sacrifice more truth, because I imagine in the process there were things that you maybe didn't want to admit or think through about your mothers, or necessarily share with someone you just met. And I wanted to be, come from performance art background, so maybe that's disciplinary, but I wanted to be implicated more and asked to give more because you were offering so much.
I think with time that would have been something we'd have really liked to do. Our hope is, and maybe at the end of this, that there's another question about this red thread. So I'm using the kind of, there's the mitochondrial Eve, the idea that there's one woman, if you track back through your maternal mother line, who all of us converge onto one woman who's the genetic kind of semblance of all of us, which I love. And also the red thread of this Chinese proverb that you walk through life with a red thread attached to you and the people that are significant in your lives. So at the end, there are little things on the table. If you want to write down the name of someone who you think is significant in your life and who you may be destined to meet, and pin it up on this wall, that would be really cool. So we're playing with that idea of how we could do more, and I love that idea of finding a space, because you're right, it's a really emotive topic that you know, it's a very emotive topic for men and women as well. I'm aware I don't want this to be a piece that alienates men in any way. Just to use 4 female voices at the beginning, I've focused on mothers and daughters. But yeah.
I certainly didn't feel alienated. This is an opportunity to help Freya. You know, although this is the formal culmination of the process open call, the idea is that it is open, and you know, there are questions about where you might take this idea next. But I wonder if anyone's got any comments or thoughts or even questions that would be helpful to Freya about things you notice. Yes?
Elizabeth, thank you. I really, really enjoyed it, and thank you for the information about the red thread, because I didn't know that information, but for me it just worked as a brilliant metaphor anyway.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested, if you have more time, to see how you could stretch and take further the gestures and the movement.
Yes.
Because there were times that were, you know, really strong, and I really felt you were working with each other very well and playing to your strengths, but other times, you know, it would have been great to see how you might develop a movement language to really bring out the text and the voice.
I'd say the staging has definitely had the least focus on it, so you're absolutely right, I agree with you.
And I also agree that there are really striking elements there as well. And I know that's something you've worked with before as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I am very keen with how we use physical theatre and our bodies to express. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments? Yes.
Yeah, my name's Richard. I mean, do you actually envisage there to be a final form of this, or do you just think it will always be a process that can be reinvented, or, I mean, you know, will it ever be written down, or will it just be a sort of...
Well, it's really interesting, because I was asked when we first met if I would get someone to arrange it, and I was like, do you know what, I can't do that. So for me, no, that's kind of, and the idea that we have singers who don't necessarily will all read, but I think that I think a bit of both. I think there'll be some bits that are fixed and structured, and some bits that allow it to go somewhere new and exciting, so it can really respond to the people in the room, because I want to try and play with just knocking down the walls of that and just letting people infiltrate the work.
And I suppose one implication of that question is might be about scale. I mean, we've heard about 20 minutes worth of this piece. And it may not be important to you, but whether you would envisage, you know, that if, say, you had a further 6-month process, and you talked about thoughts you'd had about community group involvement, you know, do you imagine that if we came back and heard the next version of this piece, it would be 40 minutes, or do you not think like that? Is it more an open form?
I would have thought it would have been nicer to. I think we could definitely have created more and edited more. We've kind of just created and done, but there's not been as much editing yet. So I think there's definitely space to create more. I guess one of the things I'd be wondering about is which audiences do we intend to reach through it, and what time, if that's a snapshot of a moment for someone walking past on their way to work, or whether they can hang around for 40 minutes, I guess would be a thought. But perhaps we would have 2 versions of it, one that's in a space that people can come to, and one that goes out that's maybe shorter.
Maybe that's a question to all of you, whether, yes, particular settings you might imagine for this, or other resonances, partnerships, connections that you think of. Yes, Tom.
Sorry, I was going to ask, because there are 2 possible directions it feels like for me. One is breadth and one is depth. So one is, you know, something larger and more considered and more edited. It does also feel like something that could potentially, you know, it could naturally tour, or it would be interesting to see it repeated with different ensembles in different spaces. Because you talk about arrangement, I don't know, but at the same time, if you took it somewhere and there was particularly one of your singers was an instrumentalist, that would be interesting. But it feels like, in terms of what the written thing you're performing is, it does feel more like a process piece or something more flexible. I also don't know when you do a work like that how you communicate that in future or different locations. But it does feel like, I don't know what your ambitions are, but one direction it could go is this sort of iterative thing in different spaces and different places.
Thank you.
Someone that,
Thank you.
And then I loved it, and I really thought that one of the main joys and strengths for me was hearing you all breathe together and the connection and relationships you had by being able to hear the breath as well. So I think when you go to a larger space, which I think it would definitely work with maybe microphones or something, so you get that visceral in-breath, that it was such a joy to hear in this small space. So thank you, all of you. It wasn't a question.
And actually that's a very nice way to end. I'm very conscious of time, and we need to move downstairs to hear Zana's piece. There will be an opportunity anyway at the end, of course, to individually talk to the artists and ask any more questions or pass on other suggestions. In the meantime, I really want to thank Freya, Laura, Kate and Anita for this wonderful performance and sharing that they've given us, and thank all of you for your input, whether just by sitting here and being part of it and giving it energy, or your questions and comments. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we will gradually, seamlessly now reconvene down the ramps. I think you'll be guided down to chairs down underneath the stairwell when you came in for the next Guitarist piece. But thank you all very much.